Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Cup Interviews. I am Jillian Robinson, your general assistant at Cup of Hemlock Theatre, and this is my first interview that I'm hosting today. I have the marvelous, astonishing, lovely Lindsey Middleton here with me today. She wears many hats in the industry, and I'm so excited for us to chat about projects she has ongoing, projects that she's done, and just spend a chat with the wonderful Lindsey.
Hi.
Hi. So to start us off, as always, I will ask the question, what is in your cup? Today, in my cup of Hemlock Cup, I am drinking some coffee with some vanilla almond creamer. And what do you have in your cup, Lindsey?
In my cup, it's actually, I messed up and it's in the other room. I'm just realizing that beside me, I have this succulent, and inside of it, my room is full of plants, like little plants everywhere. I've become like a bit of a plant mom during quarantine. How original,
I love
right?
That.
But inside of it is a healthy, unwatered succulent.
Does it have a name?
Herman.
Herman.
We have Herman and Sherman at the TV.
Love that. It was okay. So it's like a cupulent. It's a succulent in a cup.
Cupulent.
Well,
I like
that's the first, and it's gonna stick. We love that.
Keep it.
Yeah. So let's jump in. Lindsey, do you want to introduce yourself? And I'll let you just take the stage in whatever way you'd like to introduce yourself. And then we'll get into theater things.
Okay, fun. Hi, everyone. My name is Lindsey Middleton, and I, as Jill said, am aware of many hats. I like to call myself a creative in this beautiful entertainment industry that we work in, because I work in a lot of different sectors of it, and I love working in all the different sectors. But I have directed, I've written plays, I primarily am an actor. I've done theater marketing for some companies as well. I used to have my own theater company pre-pandemic, and I'm also a lover of travel and film as well.
Nice. Yes. See, all of the hats. Love it, love it, love it. Okay, so yeah, you touched already a little bit about your experience with theater. Do we maybe want to let the cat out of the bag that we both went to the same theater school?
We did. We both went to U of T and Sheridan in their theater and drama studies program, and it was a hoot and a holler. We didn't cross over, Jill and I, but our legacies did to each other.
Yeah. Yes.
The gossip crossed over.
Exactly. And it's so sweet too. Lindsey and I actually met via MJ Shaw, who was a TDS grad as well, and now is the owner of Soul Fuel Fitness, a gym studio in Toronto. And that's where Lindsey and I met. We met doing like a fitness dance class. And yeah, it's just, the world is so small. Like, it's just amazing how we linked that way. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So, a project that is happening right now that Lindsey is a part of is a Zoom play called Unmute. And I actually had the privilege of seeing that on Wednesday. And we have some upcoming performances of that too. So Lindsey actually co-wrote and stars in Unmute right now. So we'd like to talk a little bit about that to let our viewers know how amazing that this project is for you. So how would you describe the whole writing process, Lindsey, and the idea of doing Zoom plays right now during the pandemic?
Yeah, so Unmute was born out of the theater company that I currently work at called Theater of the Beat, which is a grassroots charity organization that looks to find an intersection between art and community and does a lot of social justice theater. They're primarily a touring company, and I have had the privilege of working on tours with them as a contractor, and I just kind of fell in love with them and their philosophy, and things happened and they were like, hey, do you want this job doing communications? And I was like, yes. So I work for them in that capacity. And then this summer, our education and outreach manager, Kimberly Walker, wrote a pretty big proposal to a couple of agencies in the Kitchener-Waterloo area that focus on crime prevention and domestic assault, like crisis centers. And there's kind of a bunch of organizations in that area that all work together to assist with people going through domestic violence and gender-based violence. And during COVID-19, there has unfortunately been a spike in that occurring due to isolation and staying home, and people who normally use outlets outside of the house haven't been able to as much. So we decided in collaboration with these partners to make a piece of art that addresses this and also give viewers and audience members the chance to participate as a bystander in learning ways to combat this, finding resources to help people in these situations, to look for warning signs of if something's going on at home. And how would we do that in this weird, isolated, locked down? I'm in lockdown. I don't know if everyone else is, but these worlds that we're all living in right now. So we started writing the piece in late August. We got the okay to go ahead, and we had originally pitched them a show that had been done many, many years ago as like an example show of a forum theater piece that had been done through the University of Western. And we were like, this is kind of the angle. So then we kind of looked at that as a template, but then totally jumped off board from it because we were, this is quite a long story. So the piece was originally commissioned to premiere on the radio. Our funders originally wanted a radio play because they wanted to be able to reach as wide of an audience as possible. Due to COVID-19 and kind of when this piece was commissioned for us, we were in, I don't know, stage 3, like the best stage you could be in. And then it just slowly started going yellow, red. Now we're in lockdown. So kind of the idea of getting actors into a studio or even into recording studios to do this and have people call in live and do the interventions and interactions that way, we kind of lost, the like tangible idea of doing that. So we said, why don't we pivot and do it on Zoom? Because that way we can actually reach a larger audience. We can reach a global audience. We've had people tuning in from legitimately all over the world, which is really, really cool.
Yeah.
And that's been my favorite part of it because I love travel. So I'm like, oh, that's cool. People are all over the place.
Exactly.
So there was 3 writers on the project, and we would meet every Friday, and we would come to the table with drafts, and we would basically read through what we had all written and then kind of be like, hey, take this, switch this, give each other notes, and then go back, come back to the table. Kim is a trained social worker, so we kind of pivoted and said, why don't you take on more of the interventions, which is when an audience member says stop and they want to jump into the play and try to do something else with the performers. So she kind of prepped all the actors for what to expect from the audience. I focused a lot on the Zoom version. And then there's also a podcast version of the show, which we have been recording all this week. And Cedric focused a lot on that version because obviously there's going to be differences between what you're hearing podcast and what you're seeing on Zoom. And our funders also wanted the podcast version to not be COVID specific and the Zoom play to be COVID specific. So once we kind of got all that lined up, we kind of divided and conquered in that way. And for me, it was really fun to get to focus on the Zoom version because I do have a bit of a film background as well as a theater background. And a Zoom play is basically combining those 2 worlds. So for me, it was kind of like my 2 loves coming together and using skills and knowledge and backgrounds from both to try and create something timely and important and impactful and also possible.
Yes.
Yeah, we had definitely a lot of rewrites when it came to like the intricacies of what you can do on Zoom. Because I'm not a tech wizard in that sense, so I definitely had written some stuff. And Cedric is a bit of a tech wizard, and he was like, "Lindsay, that's not possible. Like you can do that on Zoom." And I was like, "Okay." So I've learned a lot about Zoom as well in this process. But yeah, I'm very grateful that I have been able to work as an artist for the past couple of months, both as a playwright and a performer, and working for a theater company. It's been very fulfilling, and I'm just very grateful that I've had that opportunity and to write something that is very important and very timely, and is definitely, hopefully, having an impact on a lot of people. That's the feedback we're getting. So
yeah,
it seems like it's resonating with people, which is exciting.
Absolutely. Yeah, and then being an audience member this past Wednesday, seeing the show, like I definitely can speak to that. There's something about inviting audiences in a Zoom room. It is like you're in a theater, and I honestly, it feels like, and especially with this show being interactive, an audience actually have a chance to participate and go on the stage or like in the main space of the screen. It almost feels more intimate to me at some points, like being an audience member in a Zoom room. There's a vulnerability to it. Like you are in the same space as the actors. Like arguably, it feels like you're on the stage. And absolutely, the content of this piece is so relevant, and definitely, you could just sense everyone was impacted by the story and the experience. A lot of layers were hit, being a part of that experience. So I'm glad that you folks have a couple more performances, and this podcast series is a lovely like sister component to it, and knowing the more detail about how it's going to not be just COVID specific and broader in that sense too. Like that's awesome. That's wonderful. You guys divvied it all up, and
we sure did.
yeah, divided and conquered. And I keep saying too, we are living in a digital world right now, but to be honest, I feel like going forward, our world is going to be hybrid for a little bit. Like there is going to be a mesh of live, like in-person experiences and digital. Like I don't think it's going to go away, right? So you had mentioned, you love having the this experience really kind of married those two for you, like live theater and film. And I think that's something too that definitely even post-pandemic is going to be a reality, especially for artists, to kind of keep up this live and digital hybrid vibe going. So so that's so great. Yeah, for sure. I would like to know, because it is on Zoom, and like you said, you are a tech wizard, but there's a lot of, I was watching it and being like, ooh, there would be a lot of behind the scenes blueprints that would have to be laid down for this piece. Can you maybe speak to that? Because I know, without spoiling too much, there are actors in the piece that are isolated together, like just as a part of their COVID plan. So not only did everyone have a screen, but some people also shared physical space. So you could be like watching a scene of a movie because they're actually in the space together. So do you maybe want to talk about that process, and also maybe the use of multiple devices, like what's behind the scenes and unmute, I guess?
Yeah. So a lot of thought, and this even started at like the writing level of things. Our budget only allowed us to have a certain amount of actors. So that already meant that the characters we were writing, we knew there'd have to be some doubling. So we knew the mothers would have to double with daughters. And I had always in my mind been like, okay, bubbles, like doing some film work over the summer and noticing that a lot of the casting calls were now asking for bubbled performers. I was like, okay, like this isn't a new thing that's happening in our industry. Hopefully there's some other performers that are bubbled. My partner and I are bubbled together. And so when we released the casting call, we were looking for performers that were either like partners or live together, which is the case of the other team, Francis and Duncan. They are two George Brown grads that live together in the same house, so that worked out amazingly. And then Yusuf Zain is in his own world. And we're always like, I wonder when his day's going. Like, it's very strange doing a rehearsal process and doing a show, because normally you become so close to your castmates. And we're always like in the Zoom room for rehearsal, and then maybe you run lines with people, but it's definitely, that's been something I've been missing a lot, of just the connections and the family you can build together. That's definitely been like a different vibe, because you kind of sign out of rehearsals for lunch, and you have lunch with, for me, my partner, but I'm like, who's Yusuf having lunch with? Like, who's Aaron, our director, having lunch with? Like, it's this really strange thing, and I find so much great collaborative work happens on lunch break. So many important conversations about character and plot and all these things always happen there. So it's just so interesting to me that I'm like, oh, like, I missed that part of it.
Right.
But to speak to the tech, that is all Theater of the Beats artistic producer, and the show's, we call it the screen manager. So our stage manager, our screen manager, Cedric Martin, he loves technology. He's very patient at explaining it. Bless him. I don't. We've had many phone calls where I'm like, I don't know how to do this. Yeah, I truly don't know how he does what he does, because not only does he run all the tech for the show, he's also admitting and teaching people who have never used Zoom before how to mute their microphone, how to turn off their camera, all at the same time, while running sound cues, while screen sharing, while doing all these things. And my roommate is a stage manager, and she watched the show in her bedroom on opening night when we were doing it all in the hallway and in every other room in the house, basically. And afterwards, we were like, what did you think? And I was like, what were you thinking about during the show? And she was like, I couldn't not turn off my stage manager brain. And I just kept thinking, I don't understand how this person is doing what they're doing. Like, I'm so nervous for them, because there's so much tech involved in the piece. And I truly am like, I don't know how he's doing what he's doing, but he's doing it.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing is also, we've all been giving these Ethernet cables to run through our house to connect to our modems, because one element of the whole show is that it is live. Like, the whole thing is live. There's nothing pre-recorded. So if your internet goes out, you are out of the show. It's like being locked out of the theater, like every actor's nightmare. So we've definitely, I'm knocking on wood, been lucky so far that everything has mostly worked. On Wednesday night, my neighbor's fire alarm was going off extremely loud, and for an extremely long time, about 30 seconds before I had to re-enter into like the Zoom scene. And that was very nerve-wracking, because I was kind of like, this is so out of my control. Like, normally when you do a play, one of my favorite things is problem solving. Oh, like, that prop broke. What are we going to do? This is missing. What are we going to do? Like, the backstage, like, brrr. In the show, you're fully just like, oh shit. I can't fix this on my own. It's like a tech thing.
Right.
So, yes, props to Cedric. He is a wizard.
I call that like a stage manager, like octopus, because like there's definitely a moment in the piece where he's answering like something in the private chat. He's screen sharing. He's so basically being an octopus.
Yeah, and at one point, he also jumps into the show and plays a character, like, in the messaging system, and, like, screen shares like it's a doubled character in the show, and I'm always just like, how are you doing this right now? Like,
how did you change your Zoom name? When did you do that? Like, is this magic? Is this sorcery? Yeah.
It truly is. There's some
totally. And you folks use different devices too, right? It's not like you're tooting around your laptop as like your sole internet thing. Do you, like, I'm curious, how many devices did your character have, for instance?
So in this home, there's 2 laptops that we use, but I screen share my FaceTime.
Right.
Which I know it's not another device, but it's like another thing.
I remember watching that being like, this is a layer that is just like magically added for fun and games, but it's just like
they're teens. I don't think the teens are Zooming. I think the teens are just FaceTiming. So I was like, okay, let's see if we can do it. And I mean, you have to mute yourself on FaceTime, but play your sound through Zoom. And the other performer is doing that on her cell phone, but her laptop is picking up all the audio that's still connected to the Zoom meeting. So they have 2 laptops and a cell phone going on. And then Yusuf has 2 laptops in his house, I believe, as well. So there's a lot of different devices.
That is some dramaturgical due diligence, like I will say.
Oh God. I was just like, I hope people have these things.
I just know that I picked up that you had to screen share for the FaceTime to pick up the art. Like it was definitely, I read it. It was didn't get done unnoticed.
There's a lot of tech. There's a lot of tech.
That's so fun though. Like again, it's just I'm exactly like you too in a play when something goes wrong, or like this just seems like a digital playground a little bit, right? Like it's something, who would have thought at this time of 2020, like we would be doing plays on Zoom. Like it is frustrating because we don't have the ability to do live things right now. And like you said too, like the ability to just like sweat and breathe and live in a space with folks. But there is something so amazing to this new, Zoom play beast that clearly can be concocted. Like, definitely. So this run of Unmute, the live Zoom element, has 2 more shows, correct?
Yes. We have a show on Thursday, December 3rd, which is now fully at capacity because, fun fact, Zoom has a cap. Because someone was like, I'm sorry, how are you selling out your Zoom show? And I was like, fun fact, once 100 people are in the Zoom room, you cannot admit another person. So we can't give away more than 100 Zoom links because if all 100 people decide to show up, we can't not let someone in. So there actually is we're sold out of our Zoom show, which has been great. So our first 3 shows have been sold out, and we have a final show on Saturday, December 5th, which is my dad's birthday, at 7:30 EST. And I think the links are going quite quickly for that. So maybe it will still be available once this comes out. I don't know. It seems like every 2 days, Cedric is like, please take down the link. So we'll see what happens.
Do you know, because I know you mentioned you had some funding for this project. Do you know if it would be extended possibly because it is going so well?
So all of these shows that we've been able to do have been fully funded, fully sponsored, fully commissioned, fully produced by outside partners. And they wanted it to be free to the public. Okay. Theater of the Beat as an organization stays alive through touring money. So the plan going forward in 2021 is to have communities book in the show to be screened kind of in their geographic region, specifically on that night, but for a fee so that we can stay afloat as a company because it's hard out there for a theater company right now. So that's kind of our plan moving forward. And I think it has been great that these first 4 shows have been free of charge. So it's kind of getting the word out. And because it has been screened all across Canada and in different countries, we're hoping that the sales can come in from other places and people are interested in having this kind of topic discussed within their community. So we've already had some chat and some interest. So hopefully we're going to have a Zoom tour in 2021.
A zooer? How do we?
I guess it'll be a zooer. I'll have to cook all my own lunches, which is not as fun as eating out every day. But we'll see what happens. That's
nice.
The hope anyway. That's the hope. Yeah.
Well, and that's so cool too, because if we're thinking about, the Zoom room, it really does, I keep having these conversations too. Like there's an intimacy and a vulnerability that Zoom really does allow you to access because it's a scheduled meeting. You are face to face with the people that are in the Zoom room with you. So you are forced to like connect and have a conversation, even though that it's digital, right? And so it's neat that this first launch of shows for you folks has grabbed like a larger audience. But then you saying kind of going into specific communities and honing in like communities. To me, that's awesome too, because like, you literally might be watching this with some of your neighbors, right? Like it can be even more intimate because it's people that or like people that are in your circles too, right? Without getting into the content of the play, because I don't want to do any spoiler alerts, but that I think will add like a different level of resonance. You know, you're in the same space with even folks that you might actually know, like from your own community too, right?
Yeah, we've had some interest
awesome.
from some high schools as well, which there is like a teen storyline in the piece as well. So, and a lot of things happen with the teens, and yeah, I don't want to give stuff away, but I definitely think this resonates with both age categories. Because anyone can be a bystander to what's happening. Anyone can be privy to witnessing certain things, no matter how old you are. And the important thing is that you take action and have conversations and educate yourself and try and find resources to help someone, which is what this whole piece is made to do. Like, it is made to live on Zoom. Like, I personally don't see this play being performed on a stage. Like, it was written to be viewed through Zoom on a screen. Like, that's its purpose, because that is the world we live in, and that is the issue it is addressing, the rise of this horrendous thing during this time. And what can you do being stuck at home on a screen?
Yep.
What can you be aware of, and what can you keep your eye out for? So yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, I personally hope I don't have to use Zoom for too many more years, but I'm happy to do the show.
yeah, for sure. Great. So I'm just consulting my question list as we move on. We've mentioned you co-wrote this piece. You were starring in this piece. And this is the second piece of theater that you've been a part of the writing side of things, correct?
Yes, I've written a play by myself. I wrote a play called Session. I mean, I wrote it over 1,000 years, it seems like, but it had a little debut in 2019 at the Paprika Festival.
Nice.
And then 2020 happened, so live theater shows have kind of, like, I don't know, been put on a table somewhere, but I'm looking at returning to it in like a feature film sense at this point, just because I know that's an avenue that's still open, and I'm not kind of like done with the show yet. Yeah, it's pretty fun. It's about a dominatrix who accidentally starts having a session with her father, and all the adult conversations that come out of that mishap. So it's kind of like a dark comedy farce.
Nice.
Little piece. And then previously I worked collaboratively with my theater company, Theater by Committee, over 6 years. We like co-created a lot of shows together. So sometimes I was writing on that. But primarily I was a performer for a long time, but I don't know. Sometimes you just get itching to do some other stuff, and directing and writing has definitely, in the last 2 years, become a bigger part of who I am and what excites me.
Yeah. Can you talk to a little bit about like acting in your own pieces too? So, like, for instance, Unmute, like you co-writing and then also acting in it. Like, what was that experience like?
It is so hard to learn your lines. You think like, oh, I wrote this, it's just gonna be in my head. No, because like this is the 8th, 9th draft of Unmute that we've read through and had edits. And so even still, some nights I'm like, okay, is that line in the piece or is it not in the piece? It's in the podcast script, but is it in this script? Like, I will say, like, I normally have no problem learning my lines. I'm very lucky to have a brain that does that quite easily. Holy hell, not this show. I was like, what the heck is happening? Because we just change so much all the time. And it's definitely tricky sometimes, I think, to turn off like your writer brain when you're an actor, of just like, oh wow, like that sounds horrible. Like hearing someone say that, I'm like, oh yeah, that's not natural. Like, so it's, I don't know. I got really good really quickly at just being like, it's written, it's done, it's cemented, and this is what we're doing. Like, let's go with it. And all the other performers in the piece are incredible, and they bring it to life in this really beautiful, nuanced way, which makes me really happy as a writer to be like, yeah, they're picking up all these little things that, like, these words are purposeful, is something I also clocked doing this piece as an actor, of like, yes, like writers write very specifically for a reason, for you to find like all these things. They're not careless. Right. So yeah, it's kind of been this beautiful duality. That I enjoy. I have enjoyed.
Nice. So it was between you, Kimberly, and Cedric, right? The three of you.
Yeah.
Great. So did you each take a chunk, or did you kind of all attack it at one time, or specific characters?
We kind of all attacked it together. I took a draft, then Cedric took a draft. And then very quickly, we kind of realized Kim was like, I think I'm more suited to do the interventions. Like my training is more in the form theater, social work. Like that's my background. So Cedric and I did a lot more of kind of playing catch up. Like she already had a lot of the knowledge on this subject. So we did a lot of research on domestic violence. And I know for me, one of the hardest things was navigating a realistic portrayal of an abuser. I'm very fortunate. I don't have that in my life. So reading a lot of interviews with people who have abused and a lot of books on what to look out for and things like that. I spent a lot of time doing that and then navigating that into the script in a dialogue sense. But yeah, we kind of like ping ponged it back and forth. And then once we had clarity, because for a very long time, we didn't know how the show was premiering, probably up until like a month before. Like we were still like, is it going to be on the radio? How long is it going to be? Is it going to be 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour? Like there were so many factors kind of that we were juggling. And then as soon as it was cemented of like podcast, Zoom, that's when Sed and I kind of went, I got Zoom, I got podcast, right, would send it back and forth to each other of like, this doesn't make sense. And then we also had a dramaturg, which is the best thing I can ever recommend. It's just someone totally outside of the process to look at the script and be like, this is weird, this doesn't make sense, I don't understand this. And they also have a background in domestic violence. So we were very strategic about Sukhpreet coming in and helping us out with making sure the portrayals were realistic. Because for me, that was the most important thing. I don't ever want to put something out there in my writing that's not authentic to these characters. That's my number one always.
And just a shout out to Duncan, who plays like the kind of spoiler alert, but the primary abuser in the piece. He did a wonderful job embodying that realistically, and especially in a medium that is not comfortable for all actors as well too. Like that was a great switch into making that as realistic as possible. That's so neat. I love that. I get this little sort of like behind the scenes intel of what happened behind, because it truly is, folks, like it truly is a masterpiece. Like, like it's really well done. And I'm excited to hear the podcast footage too. Like, I like that it's still going to be growing. This piece isn't going away anytime soon. And nor should it. It definitely, I think it's so resonant with a lot of the themes. Amazing. So back to my question list, which we've pretty much ticked a lot of them. So you talked about how, so you've been talking about how you're a writer and you're an actor and you like to dabble both in theater and film. Are there any other hats that you care to share? I know that you also did like a web series podcast at one point. Like tell us some more about all these different hats you wear.
So I grew up in a tiny town called Ridgeway, and I was always a keener to work in the arts, and there wasn't a huge art scene there. I very luckily had an amazing drama program at my tiny 400-person school. My drama teacher is a genius. And there was also a community theater. There just happened to be. And I was doing 3 shows a year since the time I was 13. So theater was always kind of my beginning and my training and my baseline. Then I went to theater school because I was like, well, this is what you do. And then as soon as I moved to Toronto when I was 17, 18, one of those ages, I was going to auditions for film every second I could, because it was the first time in my life I had ever had kind of the opportunity to independently get on a bus, go downtown, because I was living in Mississauga and I didn't have a car. Go to an audition, and I would try and do like 3 a day, because I'd be commuting 90 minutes there, 90 minutes back. That's 3 hours on the bus. I'd be doing my homework, trying to learn Spanish on the bus.
Yeah.
I took Spanish in first year. And I was just so keen to just like drink it all in, try everything. And I've kind of seen that is what my like career has been, of whatever comes my way. I'm kind of like, yeah, let's try it. Let's see if it resonates. And to be honest, there hasn't been too many things that I'm like, no, I'm not really into this. If it's creative and if it's collaborative, surrounded by people, I'm pretty much game to do it all. I've done everything from puppetry to musicals to film and TV, movies, commercials, voiceover, kind of like dabbled in it all. Theater, I will say, I think will always be my first love. Just the process alone is, again, you just build your family. It's very collaborative. It's very just unique to no other work environment out there, I don't think.
I agree.
Yeah, so I've kind of put on a lot of hats.
And you travel too. You like to travel. So tell us a little bit about the map behind you, about your travel bug and how you've kind of built projects into that hobby of yours.
Yeah, it's what a funny hobby. Someone asked me what my hobbies were, and like a new person I met was like, "What's your hobby?" And I was like, "Is backpacking a weird hobby?" Because that is truly my hobby. Like, that's what I go and do for fun. Again, I think it's because I grew up in a small town, and I always just had this energy to go and like find more and explore more and see new things. And when I was 16, I saved up all of my babysitting money and I went to Costa Rica on a school trip. It was the first plane that I'd ever been on. And I made this promise to myself that every year I would get on a plane. And I have gotten on a plane every year since I was 16. I'm really nervous about 2021. I don't know if it's going to happen.
Yeah.
But it's okay. There's bigger problems in the world than getting on a plane. But yeah, I just absolutely love it. I love exploring. I love meeting new people. And I'm also like a busybody. I need to be doing something all the time. And when I went on my first backpacking trip when I was 20, I had this kind of like, this is fun, but I miss creating. And my best friend at the time was also on a trip, and she had the same feeling. And when we came back, we were talking about it of like, it's fun being in limbo, but I miss like direction. I miss like having something I'm like working towards or just creating something. And so when we went on a 4-month backpacking trip together, we decided to kind of document it and vlog about it. This was even before like Instagram was really that big of a thing. And we would just interview women that we would meet and ask them, what makes you happy? And through that, we created this little series called Happy Her that we've traveled to, I think, over 11 countries together, and talk to women just from all over the world about what happiness means to them. And lives change and adapt. And now I don't get to go on 6-month trips as much as I would like to. So it's been harder to continue that tradition going. But I'm hopeful that maybe once a vaccine comes, I will be getting on a plane and maybe doing that for quite a while. So we'll see.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have like such a radiance about you, Linz, that like definitely I totally understand why you are a part of so many projects that involve community, because you just have this magnetic energy. And like I think that's the reason why we're so close as well, is like the same kind of like, what's the next direction, sort of like busybody vibes, like what are we doing, how do we just take on whatever comes our way. And it's funny because being in theater school, that I remember getting that advice, kind of especially coming out of theater school fresh, to kind of obviously there's certain projects you shouldn't say yes to, but to kind of allow yourself to have that open access to just saying yes to different experiences and different positions, and then just having that kind of pave your way. And I think it's just like really refreshing to have this conversation too, especially with artists just coming out of school, or even artists that are like stuck in a rut of like, it's okay to kind of like pivot your path a little bit and like just take on and add more skills. Like for instance, I've been doing some like screen managing throughout the pandemic as well, because I love stage management, and that side I've kind of wanted to explore that too. And that's just happened to be the thing on the menu for 2020. It's doing like some audio dramas, or, getting in, learning the tech side of things through Zoom too. And it's that marrying of like your hobbies with like your skill sets, and just kind of letting the chips fall where they may.
And it's also meeting people, right? Like it's still collaborative. It's still being involved in something bigger than yourself, and just being with people. I don't know, like that's community has always been, I think, my number one driving force and everything, which is why like lockdown has been difficult, because one day someone looked at me and was like, how are you doing? They were like, you can't do a play, you can't get on a plane, and you can't throw a party. What the hell are you doing? And I was like, we're pivoting. We're pivoting. We're writing a lot. You just got to find like your new thing, because 2020 has taught us like, you just got to keep going. And you gotta find, you just got to keep going.
You're like starting up a Zoom party now. You put like a background of like a sunset behind you. So you're like, okay, I'm traveled. I'm starting a party, and all of the people are coming here. Like, this is what we're doing. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's so great. I love hearing, I mean, because we're close, we're friends, but I love hearing this detailed history of your little mosaic life. So I have to ask too, once we pivot again back into being in space with folks again, and like theaters open up, stages become a thing, even if it's just outdoor stages. Like, what are you most looking forward to when we can kind of be back in the quote unquote normal theater space again?
I'm looking forward to doing a group warm up with people. I am looking forward to finishing a show and going and getting a beer and talking about it.
My gosh, right?
Like, that has been something that has also been very strange. Like, we finish the show and everyone leaves the Zoom room, and then it's all of us, and we're like, hey, but we're also isolated in what's happening. Like, I was like, yeah, we had a fire alarm going off like in our house, and they were like, oh yeah, like my internet rebooted, or like whatever it was. Like, it's just the community. Yeah. I cannot wait to like have that back together. Yeah. And just be in a room full of people, and be in a big cast, and just be with people. That's
when you go to the bar and you're like, yes, I will split that entire pitcher of beer with one other cast member, because the show was awesome, and I will eat that pizza at 11:30 because I'm starving from doing for sure. You look back and you're like, I do not regret those nights at all. Like, that's never. Definitely.
And like, that's where I've like made like my Toronto family, is doing plays or doing like creative projects with people. So I'm just so excited to be like, can we do something? Like, let's all get together. The thing I hate most with this world right now is like the selectivity of who I see is truly heartbreaking for me, because I don't enjoy that. I literally have a house party and I'm like, come, I don't care. Just come in. I don't know who you are. Bring your partner. I don't care. So this whole like, you can see one, I'm just like, oh my God. When can I open the door? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I agree. And just like giving people hugs.
Yes.
Yeah, like big cast group hugs or what have you. Yeah. For sure. And speaking of being in the same space, we mentioned this earlier, how Lindsey and I met doing some fitness classes at Soulview Fitness, a gym in Toronto. So that's something that we've been doing virtually. Remember when we did the May Fitness Challenge? That was fun. Lindsey and I, we made a commitment to like either tell each other that we're doing a class on the day, or like take a live class together. And that was awesome, because it was kind of like we were in the same space, even though we couldn't be, right?
Yeah. It's like working out with a friend.
Yeah, exactly. And then you just recently did a like a paint night for charity. Can you expand on that? Because that was so fun to watch your Instagram stories.
So Theater of the Beat the company that I work for is a registered charity, and they were doing a charity fundraiser. And as a staff member, they asked me if I would try and raise some funds. And I said, sure. But so it was like a biking, you could bike to raise money. And I was kind of like, I bike a lot, or I used to pre like COVID time. So I was kind of like, okay, like biking, I don't know. I don't think anyone cares to watch me bike. Everyone has seen me get on a bicycle. I'm always the girl who's biking. So I was kind of like, what could be something like different and fun and like an incentive for people to donate? And also that's like creative, because I keep trying to find ways to keep myself creative during this time. And I was like, you know what? Let's paint. Let's paint for 24 hours straight. And if you donate, I will paint you a picture of like, if you give me a word, whether like it was nature or sci-fi or you better work, I like whatever it was. So I made 24 paintings in 24 hours. 3 a.m. was the worst time. That was
I was gonna ask. I was like, where was it? When did the exhaustion hit it?
It hit earlier than I thought. It was like 1:30. I was like, oh wow, I still have a while to go. I used to bartend until 5 a.m. So I was like, this will be nothing. This will be fine. I've done this for years and years, but I haven't done it in years and years. It was something I forgot. So my roommate and my partner were here, which is great. And they kept me going. My partner stayed up all night with me, which was just so lovely to have someone. We watched the sunrise at 7:30. And then I started my last painting. And painted 24 in 24 hours. And there's still 4 that I need to like deliver and get to people, but they're all out of the city. So I don't know when they're getting them, but they'll get them. But yeah, it was really fun. I'm just trying to find fun, silly ways to keep myself entertained, basically.
Again, you like hit so many so many targets. Like it was a paint night for you, it was to give back, it was to build community. Like I love that. And I think sometimes we forget, we're isolated, we're in quarantine. It's okay to like pull an all-nighter, like, live on the edge, stay up all night. Why not? Like you can catch up on sleep. That's so fun and so lovely that, and I remember it went really well. Like people, I kept tuning in too. I was like, I think I went to bed pretty late that night too. And I was like, oh, she's still going. I'm just like catching up on these Instagram stories.
I was pretty big on the Insta that day. I was trying to keep it going, keep people entertained, keep myself entertained. Every single person got like their own curated playlist for when I was making their painting. Like I would just think of them and be like, hey, what's like a song or an artist that like is them? And so I would like use that music to kind of like inspire me as well. And it was also a beautiful time to reflect on my community and all these amazing people. I mean, I very gratefully had more than 24 people donate. I raised over $1,400, which was surprising and amazing. And it was just a lot of time to sit and think and be grateful of all these beautiful people.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, that seems like a wonderful bookend to our conversation today. Like once again, you're such a light, and just every project you've explained today, like you have all the components of community and being grateful and just sharing your warmth during this time. I know even for me personally, like you've been one of my motivations throughout COVID. And I know you were that for so many people too. So any conversation to have with you is just makes my day.
Shucks.
Yeah.
You too, baby gal.
So, So Unmute has one more show that's not sold out yet on Saturday, December 5th at 7:30. EST, correct. I know. We always have to tag that now because people are all over the world.
Not everyone is in Toronto like we think they are in our
Exactly. So that's awesome. And then we'll keep our ears peeled for the podcast component too coming down.
2021. I'm not sure how or when or what's happening. We're going to decide soon.
Love that. Well, thanks so much for spending this time with us.
Thank you for having me.
Cup of Hemlock Theatre. And I'll see you in a Zoom space soon. We'll do like a fitness class or a party or, we'll get creative or reading. Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Okay. Well,
Thanks,
thank you
Dad.
so much for watching, everyone. And we will see you on our next episode. Be kind to yourselves. Stay safe. Bye, everyone.
Wash your